Good morning, everyone, and thank you so much for joining us here in Parry Sound. And I'd like to start off by just introducing myself. I'm Matt Richter, Ontario Green Party candidate for Parry Sound, Muskoka. You know, every day leading up to this election and during, I've been met by people just sharing about how they're struggling to get by. One individual shared again how they have full-time work, and yet they just can't get by without accessing the local food bank to make ends meet. I'd like to give a shout out to the Harvest Share Community Food Program for all the good work that the volunteers and staff do there. Another individual came to me and just said, Matt, to make life easier, to get by, I need to cheat the system. The system's rigged. People in our riding and across Ontario are sharing that it's not fair. There's not enough hope. There's not enough way forward to get by. Ontario Greens are listening, and we know that people aren't looking for handouts. They're just looking for a bit of fairness. And that's why people are often shocked when they hear of different announcements from the current government, or the past government, I should say. What's the latest rendition of Buy Your Vote from the PC government? And right now, it was a $200 check to the super rich. How is that justified? People want to know. People want fairness. Here in Parry Sound, Muskoka, we have a plan, and it's a plan that's good for all of Ontario. A plan that's going to deliver on affordable homes. A plan that's going to give assistance for first-time home buyers. A plan that's going to ban and end the privatization of our health care. A plan that's going to have an Ontario government that puts people first. A plan that's going to deliver fairness and affordability. And to add to this plan, an important key measure, with great gratitude and sincere thanks, I'd like to have all of us give a warm welcome to Mike Schreiner, leader of the Ontario Green Party.
Yeah. All right.
Well, I tell you what, it is great to be in Parry Sound today with a local champion like Matt Richter, who is working hard to be your advocate at Queen's Park, not Doug Ford's voice in Parry Sound, Muskoka. I tell you what, as Matt and I knock on doors, we're talking to people about housing affordability, health care, and the affordability crisis people are facing. People are struggling to get by, and Ontario Greens are listening. What they have told us is that in Doug Ford's Ontario, the rich get richer and the rest of us struggle just to pay the bills. Food bank use is at an all-time high in Ontario, up 78% just in the last 2 years. And a lot of that growth is full-time workers having to go to a food bank just to put food on the table. That's not fair. That's not the kind of Ontario everyday people deserve and expect. And that's why today, the Ontario Greens are announcing a plan to address the affordability crisis so people can pay the rent or pay their mortgage, put food on the table, maybe take a holiday March break with their family. And so in order to deliver fairness and affordability, Ontario Greens are announcing today that we will cut income taxes for individuals earning under $65,000 a year and families earning under $100,000 a year. This will save a middle-income worker up to $1,700,000 a year. Money in their pocket to help them pay the rent, pay the mortgage, put food on the table, buy clothes for their kids. And you're going to ask me, how are you going to pay for that? Well, the Ontario Greens are proposing we will raise taxes on the highest income earning tax bracket in order to pay for tax cuts for low and middle income workers. This is part of our plan to fight for fairness. It's basically saying those who have the most should pay a little bit more. So those who are working hard just to get by can have a bit more to support their families during this cost of living crisis we're facing. That's the kind of fairness we need in Ontario, and that's how we're going to address the affordability crisis here in Parry Sound, Muskoka, and across the province of Ontario. I'm happy to take any questions.
So it's been a little more than a week since the election started. Are you finding that people are starting to tune in and are getting more attention into this campaign?
Oh, absolutely. Definitely now when you're going to the doors, people know there's an election happening. I mean, they see the signs and, they want to have a conversation. And I can tell you when we talk to people at the doors, especially in ridings outside the GTA, they're feeling abandoned by Doug Ford. They see a premier wasting $2.2 billion on a mega spa in downtown Toronto. They see a premier wanting to spend tens of billions of dollars tunneling under the 401 or wasting $40 million ripping up bike lanes, spending $10 to $12 billion on Highway 413 when we have a perfectly good highway right next door to it. And so people outside of the GTA are saying, we don't even think people in Toronto want those kinds of things, but we're feeling abandoned, especially when we're facing a housing affordability crisis. We're seeing an unprecedented number of people not having access to a family doctor. You're seeing closures of emergency departments in our rural hospitals. And you're seeing people facing an affordability crisis, and they're saying, why is Doug Ford wasting all this money on things in the GTA that people in Toronto don't even want when we're struggling just to get by? And that's exactly why we've put forward a plan today to reduce taxes, cut income taxes for people earning under $65,000, households under $100,000, because that's the kind of fairness people want, and that's the kind of fairness we're talking with people about at the doors.
So today's announcement is about taxes. You've talked a lot about affordability, housing, family doctors, but I guess what about the environment and the climate crisis? What place does it have in your campaign?
Yeah, so we will be making some additional affordability announcements around how we can address the climate crisis and save people money at the same time. We would reverse Doug Ford's subsidies for gas hookups in this province, overturning an independent energy board decision that would have saved people 13% minimum to heat and cool their homes. But instead, Doug Ford wants to put the profits of giant gas companies like Enbridge ahead of affordability for everyday Ontarians. So our plan to address climate is all about how do we help people save money by saving energy and bringing fairness to Ontario.
I just wanted to ask about family doctors specifically as well, because you have a plan to connect everyone in Ontario to primary care. How exactly are we going to get there?
Yeah. Well, I mean, first of all, we need to make sure that we have enough family doctors by having a recruitment and retention strategy for family doctors, nurse practitioners, and team-based care, primary care throughout the province. One of the things that I just met with a number of students who are studying family medicine. Only 20% of them are actually planning on going into primary care family practice. You know why? Because the administrative burden and costs on them are so high. Greens voted for a resolution calling on the Ford government, to reduce administrative burden and costs off of family physicians, and Ford said no. If we are going to recruit and retain more family doctors, we have to reduce the administrative burden on them. We have to pay them for providing those administrative services that are connected to care. And we need to ensure that all primary health care providers operate at their full scope of practice and are part of team-based medicine that we can spread to every community in this province, because it's simply not acceptable that Doug Ford has allowed 2.5 million Ontarians to not have a family doctor, and that will grow to 5 million if we don't address this problem due to early retirements of those family doctors we have right now.
Matt, if you want to touch on this specifically in your region, is it something you've been hearing at the doors a lot?
Oh, absolutely. And in our riding of Parry Sound Muskoka, we have 20,000 people without a family doctor or primary caregiver. And in fact, the other night we were in Carling, just outside of Parry Sound towards Killbear. And the community in Carling, I encourage them to ensure that they have a Made in Carling approach for their advocacy for community care, a nurse practitioner, community care-led clinic. And it's that type of thinking and that type of logic that we need to realize that in order to get the healthcare we deserve here, it's going to be a multifaceted approach, but it involves the government listening to the needs of the community and ensuring that the funding's there.
Talking about funding, I would like to, well, maybe Mike and Matt, both of you. I would like to ask a more specific question regarding the medical center in Berks Falls. So every year they are facing deficits and they are relying entirely on taxpayers' money to keep working and keep operating. So how would the Green Party of Ontario would help that facility work without a deficit every year?
Yeah, I'll start and I'll let Matt finish. So we'll be in Berks Falls tomorrow, so I'm looking excited to spend some time in Berks Falls tomorrow. I always enjoy going there. And one of the problems we're facing in healthcare across the province is that Ontario is dead last when it comes to per capita funding for healthcare of any province in the entire country. It would take an additional $12 billion just to bring Ontario up to the national average. This is Doug Ford's Ontario. Wasting money on projects in the GTA that people don't even want. Meanwhile, folks in Berks Falls are struggling to pay for the healthcare services that the province should be paying for. We will fix that. We will fix that. And I'm going to let Matt talk specifically. Yeah.
And it's a great question. I appreciate it because the folks up in Almaguin, it extends beyond Berks Falls. And in fact, Rod Ward, the mayor of Armour, has been a champion, along with other Reeves and mayors, of course, about the need to have the Berks Falls healthcare team and the clinic fully funded. At the same time, we have to remember that Berks Falls lost their hospital back in 2008, and they've done their sacrifice. So the fact that it's $53,000 that they're just on the shortfall from, and the government can't stand up and provide that funding, and they're looking to go back to the property tax base for finding ways to fund such a needed infrastructure, a needed facility in Almaguin, I think it's quite shameful. And I wished the Ontario government had have stepped up and avoided this whole situation from happening in the first place with appropriate funding.
Cool. And then last question. Last election, you guys were second. It was a very tight run with Graydon. What would you say are the key issues this election, and what would you say are the solutions that you bring to the table that would set you aside from the other parties?
I'll go first and I'll let Matt go. Sure. So I think the biggest differentiator between the Ontario Greens and every other party in this province is that I am not Matt Richter's boss. Doug Ford is not Matt Richter's boss. The people of Parry Sound Muskoka are Matt Richter's boss. In ridings across this province, we are running proven local leaders who will be your champion, your advocate at Queen's Park, not the leader's voice in your riding. We have centralized too much power in the Premier's office and in party leaders' offices in this province, and that needs to change. And Matt Richter can stand up and fight for housing affordability, fight for healthcare funding, fight to protect the places that people love here in Parry Sound, Muskoka, because he's your advocate at Queen's Park, not Mike Schreiner's voice in the riding.
And specifically, again, from one election to the next, the issues, the top key priorities seem to remain the same. Affordable housing, lack thereof, issues around staffing and resources for our healthcare sector and our education sector are always front and center. And then, of course, everything towards maintaining and preserving our healthy climate, our forests, our watershed, of course, are key important issues, as always. In order to make sure it happens, people like seeing a new way of doing politics where we put people ahead of party and we ensure that the money that's being spent, our money being spent, is going to the priorities that actually make sense for our riding of Parry Sound Muskoka. We certainly don't need a tunnel projected at over $50 billion under the 401 being even considered when we have all these issues around staff retention and retainment in the healthcare sector. We see burnout among our nurses, our educational assistants, education workers as a whole. Why this government consistently puts money to these special self-interest projects, I have no clue. The Ontario Greens are there to fight and fight for you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
On the entire GO line. We're still waiting for the Ford government to even bring forward a timeline for all-day two-way GO on the Kitchener line, for example, which was promised 10 years ago. So I would say to the Premier, when are you actually going to actually deliver what you say you're going to deliver on? Because people are sick and tired of being told they're going to have all-day two-way GO service and they're not receiving it. And secondly, I would say we can immediately starting next week, expand GO service through expanded bus service. We need direct intercity bus service connecting communities in and around Southern Ontario. And the fact that the Premier has failed to deliver on that just tells you that, you know, sometimes he is all talk and no deliver. Great, thank you.
All right.
Great. Thanks, everyone. Kevin, you're doing a great job here.
All right.
Good.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Mary's my office.